Blake, do you want to tell Alex who he killed?
So,
I was
as it
gonna
turned
say
out,
before you guys say anything, can I make a quick assumption that I swapped the combat and non-combat encounters?
You kinda did.
yeah. That being said, I was so happy to see the ram come into play.
It was very creative use.
Yeah, I rolled for his mini items in the cloak, and the second the ram popped up, I was just like, oh man, I can't wait to see how this gets used.
That's nutty.
But yeah, you killed the good Dr. Van Shellfish. Not
Well, to be
Dr.
fair-
Van Selfish.
Yeah, I realized the shellfish pun once he was a lobster, and I was like, that's hilarious. But listen, dude was pissed off by then, didn't want to miss his meal. He wasn't gonna.
No, absolutely.
Nope, it's understandable. And he did steal your spice pouch.
Yeah. And also, I'm neutral evil, so like, the fact that he was good does not bother me.
Understandable. Yeah, every encounter had a combat resolution with like stat blocks and everything, and like roll 20 sheets that I was prepared to use to roll things off of.
Mm-hmm.
But you, I think, managed to resolve the first one in more or less the intended way. The second one, tangential to the intended non-combat resolution, and then you proceeded to murk our boy, good Dr. Van Shellfish. For your reference,
But he was delicious.
he was.
Also,
a
isn't
lobster.
eating sentience like a huge no-no in like this realm?
It's complex because like a lot of things are sentient here, you know?
That's a good point, because dragons eat kobolds.
Amongst other activities, yeah.
Yeah. Such as transforming into humans and living nearly forever.
Mm-hmm.
Dragons are weird in D&D, let me tell you that.
Dragons are pretty funky. Speaking of dragons, though, you just killed a young bronze dragon. That's what the lobster suit had the stats of.
Oh!
Yeah,
Wow,
all
I'm pretty
those
proud
like
of them.
servo recharging activities were
Where it's, yeah.
rolls to recharge the dragon's breath weapon.
Yeah, the, like, epic actions or whatever they're called. Oh, no, that would be... I'm thinking of something else.
No, those are legendary actions. This is just roll a 1d6 on 5 or 6, it recharges the breath weapon.
But that is usually how legendary actions work as well, right? They're usually on that sort of recharge. I don't think
Legendary
that's a rule,
actions
it's
just
like-
refresh per round, actually, and it's the GM's discretion
Oh.
when and how to use them, budget them.
Ah, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
but
really liked this character, though. I had a lot of fun with him.
yes, you
Gave
made
me
really good
mad
use of the
Sekiro
cloak.
vibes, but like in a good way.
Huh?
Thanks.
What vibes?
Sekiro?
Ah, of course, of course.
Yeah.
Giant ape. You're a giant ape, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
Oh god, I'm still stuck on that boss fight. Don't even talk about it.
Alright, sorry. No Sekiro spoilers in 1 hour one-offs. No way.
Yeah.
But also,
No, I care
Dr.
less about
Van
spoilers. I'm
Shellfish...
just pissed at that stupid ape.
Yeah. Van Shellfish got really lucky with the initiative roll because he himself had the stats of a normal lobster, which
I
left
was
him
gonna
with
say,
15 AC and 13 HP.
yeah, if I'd beat him to that suit, that might have just been it.
Oh, it 100% would have been it. The suit did
Oh
have
yeah,
like...
because I could have,
Mhm.
even if I wouldn't have been able to reach him, I have lunging attack too, so I could have also used my proficiency die to hit him from 10 feet away,
Ooh. Brutal.
or superiority die.
Yeah. So our bronze dragon / lobster had 25 of 142 hit points at the end when I let you get the ram execute. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's actually always a struggle I have as a DM, is like,
Mm-hmm.
is 0 HP death or defeated, you know?
Right. I think
Like,
the 5e manual is pretty clear about it, but like in a lot of other, settings, it's pretty...
What is
I don't know,
the
I just
5e ruling on
I
that?
just kind of go case by case, because everything I run is a homebrew monstrosity anyway.
Makes sense.
Fair.
The 5e ruling is that 0 HP is death, unless it is some kind of like notable enemy or a player character, in which case you give it death saves so that like player characters can have a bit more freedom to determine what exactly happens.
Got it.
Otherwise, like 5e mooks default to death unless the melee attack that puts them to 0 is intended to be non-lethal, in which case
Yeah.
they are unconscious.
And that's a good point. I don't think I had read specifically that passage, because it's like, if you're fighting like a wild animal, it doesn't take a lot for an animal to think a fight is no longer worth it unless it's like protecting its children or thinks it has no other choices,
Yeah, of course. I have like animals and sentients run off all the time when I run 5e at school. Like goblins will flee if like a third of their pack goes down, for example.
And that's something that I like think of a lot while I'm playing, but then while I'm DMing, I always get focused on other things and end up realizing that like the pack of goblin raiders fought to the man against a high level party, and that just makes no sense.
Yeah, I definitely had that problem starting out too. But I think I've gotten better at it. There's like a site that I use for 5e that like talks about how you run each monster. It's called like The Monsters Know What They're Doing. Maybe some of our listeners are familiar, but it's like really cool. They like get into like the mindsets of like different elementals and whatever. Highly recommend it. But
That's
yeah.
really interesting. Yeah, because elementals are something that I have never been able to like. Sure, a dragon I can get its motivation, goblin, really any type of human, but like a rock elemental, you're just like, does it just want to go back to being a rock?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows?
Yeah, dragons are fun though. Like, you get to lie as the GM.
Yes.
Like, what more could you want,
Are you not doing that to your players at all times already?
Kind of sort of. Lies have a mission, certainly. But I'd say, like, as a GM, I try to be a pretty honest narrator, unless I'm, like, in character being dishonest,
I try and go for. I think I go for a similar thing where it's like the things you saw and that I say are honest from the perspective of the thing seeing or saying them, but that doesn't mean that I won't necessarily like pick and choose your exposure to this world to try and guide your understanding of it in a specific way.
Right, makes sense. Also, I liked your character. You had all sorts of neat backstory. Mountain giant.
Yeah.
fighting. Indeed.
Do you wanna hear a little bit of his stuff?
Yeah, please.
So Karg is actually not a samurai. He is a ronin because his lord is dead and he does not have a new one.
Oh,
He lived in a great kingdom ruled by an orcish king who ruled over a tundrous mountain landscape where basically it was a society of humans and orcs, and therefore obviously some half-orcs, that were defending their borders from the invading mountain giants. Their society was very like combat oriented because they're constantly fighting these giants, and they're in the tundra, so most of their food was from hunting. But it was actually very internally peaceful because the orcish king was actually like surprisingly kind and good to his people. Eventually, however, the humans made an alliance with the mountain giants and combined forces to overthrow the orcish king and banished. They killed all of the orcs and banished all of the half-orcs from that land, and that is Karg Two Rose is still wandering from that.
That's
But
so
he
sad.
believes, yeah, he has basically he doesn't comprehend, like he grew up in this life and as like a personal guard to this king and fought alongside him in many battles and doesn't really understand the concept of what it means to not live and serve in that way. So he's basically just rebranded his nation's borders at wherever he happens to be right now and still fights to uphold those, like, that rule of law wherever he is.
I like that.
Yeah. So I landed on neutral evil because he follows his laws, and they're like orcish mountain wilderness laws, which are a little draconian.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if we're supposed to get into it at this point, but that like brings up the whole alignment table like nonsense that Gary, left us with, because I think you can make a case there even for like lawful neutral, because like you've got the whole internal order being lawful and so on, right?
Yeah, and I think this is absolutely the place to get into it. There's nowhere else on the show we're going to get into this.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I fully agree. I think that it's far more interesting to define a character and then assign an alignment rather than the other way around, and that there's often not an objective correct assignment.
Mm-hmm.
That's typically what I do, although frequently I end up going, oh yes, this is the character, and then completely forget about assigning an alignment at all.
What are your thoughts on the table in general, Derek?
I don't know. I think it's pretty absurd that like people get into like such huge arguments about like where characters fall onto it, especially like characters from like other like fantasy franchises, for example. Like, what is Gandalf? Like, does it matter what Gandalf is? But like also because the table itself is so nebulous, right? And I think I'm just sick of seeing arguments about characters and their alignment, because in the end, like, it's just a D&D like setting a precedent that's not necessarily ideal, the same way like Tolkien came along and completely changed what elves are in fantasy,
Yeah, dude, I was doing some research. I wrote this is getting very off topic, but I'll say it anyway. I wrote a paper freshman year in college about different races in Middle-earth and like how they're kind of an analogy. They're all different analogies for humankind, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing just some research into mythical races in general, and you are like so incredibly right to a mind-blowing degree. Like, Tolkien basically wrote the entirety of what we understand as like fantastical races.
Yeah, pretty much.
And basically based it on nothing. He pretty much made it all up. Like, elves were pretty much strictly evil until Tolkien.
Yeah, or they were like impish and like small, and like not slender, graceful, long-lived, etc.
And they were like mischievous, and I guess evil is not the right term, but they were like harmful in the same way that like a dangerous storm is harmful. They were like a part of nature that was powerful and dangerous and therefore to be feared.
Yeah, like fae as a word has fallen out of usage since Tolkien.
Yeah.
Because,
and like it exists in D&D now, but it's no longer super associated with elves.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. I mean, that being said, I love Tolkien, so like, I'm not gonna hate on him for that, but it is super interesting.
Right, of course.
I also did my best. I thought just bringing it back to this episode a little, I thought it was interesting playing like an orcish samurai.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was reading, because this is a little bit getting back to the alignment stuff too, because it was like, samurai tend to be lawful, pretty much strictly. And then it was like, orcs, or half-orcs tend to be chaotic, pretty much strictly. And I was like,
True.
So I went with neutral, which was basically just, he's been trained, like, he like, I don't even know how to think about it, where it's like, me personally, in real life, I take a lot of martial arts, and it's something I take very seriously. And so, like, the idea of samurai and, like, total dedication to a martial life in that sense doesn't, like, I don't necessarily understand it, but it's one of my favorite fantasy stories, basically.
It's a great trope, yeah.
Yeah, and, like, like, I love Wu-Tang Clan and all of the stuff they do with, like, old kung fu movie samples and, like, the the stuff there, and there's a really awesome Jizza album which uses all of this audio footage of a samurai who has come home, and his emperor has started to fear him because he got so powerful and like so skilled with the sword. So he sent ninjas to come and kill him while he was home.
Oh, no.
The samurai. But the samurai wasn't home, so they killed his wife instead.
Not ideal.
And left his son alive. And the samurai comes home to find his living child son, who can't even walk or talk, and his dead wife. And he puts a ball and a sword in front of the child and says, you have to choose. Are you going to be a warrior or a child? If you are a warrior, your life is over. You have dedicated yourself to the life of the Ronin and the revenge, and you will come with me and know nothing but fighting and war. If you choose the ball, you can die here a child. And just lets the boy crawl to one of them.
Dang, that's hardcore.
Right? In the movie, the boy chooses the sword, but...
Understandable.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you chose to play a half-orc samurai archetype, actually, because one of the players that, like, I DM for semi-regularly plays a half-orc samurai archetype. And, like, he has, like, really good art for it and everything. Kind of want to show you after all this is done.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, and I was like, of course the half-orc samurai has to have a kanabo.
Of course.
It's a very good aesthetic. I agree.
I mean, pretty much just change his skin to red, and he kind of looks like an Oni. Like, he kind of look like an Oni, so it really works.
Absolutely.
I was actually doing research on kanabo, and there's apparently a Japanese saying which is like giving a kanabo to an Oni, which means basically to make a bad situation worse, which I thought was hilarious.
That's really cool.
But yeah, it also just more kanabo history, because I was doing research on them. I thought they were called tetsubos before, but it turns out that's like an alternate name.
Huh.
Tetsubo? I don't know the pronunciation.
I also wouldn't know it, so we're fine. We're all Orientalist, I guess.
Languages aren't exactly my strong suit.
Is Asiatic the term?
Asiatic.
Asiatic. Okay, I don't know if that might have just been Discord.
I think that's what I said, but
yeah. Like I said, that might have just been Discord distorting things.
Yeah, probably.
There's a Greek saying, an Attic Greek saying I really like. The translation is, and it's the equivalent. It's their equivalent of saying it's Greek to me, and it translates to it's Chinese to me. which I find hilarious.
Perfect.
There's always a bigger Greek.
Of course.
A very strange interaction I had in my life was my sister is Chinese, and so I took the two of us took Mandarin lessons for a chunk of time when we were younger.
Cute.
And this was back when my British accent was a little stronger, because I was younger and had been in America for less long. And as it turns out, if you speak Mandarin with a little bit of a British accent, your teacher will think that you're speaking with a Cantonese accent and not believe you that you don't know Cantonese. Which was, like, weirdly traumatic for little me, trying to explain to this person that only knew a little bit of English while not knowing nearly enough in Mandarin to explain my situation.
I'm sorry to hear it.
That sounds honestly brutal.
I really like, I don't know a ton of Cantonese, but I do like its sound and tone in general, though. I mostly just know animal names in it from Kung Fu, though.
I think that's really funny, actually, because Cantonese is, like, spoken largely in, like, southern China, including Hong Kong, which, British imperial rule. So, like...
Well, yeah. That's, like... I think that historically it has some basis. I don't know a ton about it, but, like... Yeah, bizarre. For me, at that time, I was just, like... I had no idea what was happening. Because I hadn't put together the fact that it was my British accent then. I was just like, I am just saying what you're telling me to say.
So sorry that happened.
No, it was fine. So what was the original inspiration for this, Derek? Trying to slowly bring things back to the episode.
The original inspiration for the episode?
Yeah.
Let's see. We'd been doing some pretty, I guess, serious, like high stakes things up until now, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I like definitely enjoy those kinds of narratives, but as a DM, I don't think I have what it takes to like set that kind of tone. But something that I do like doing is like lighthearted, like I don't know, like chip tunes, like good vibes aesthetics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I had a conversation with Lyrica while debating reaching out to contact you about this project.
Uh-huh.
And a pretty decent chunk of the conclusion was that you would be a really good offset to Blake and I in that sense.
The punishment for failure is always death.
Where Blake is very much the opposite end of that spectrum from you, and I land in kind of like a bit of a middle ground where Blake is like, oh, they're gonna die, you're like, you'll be fine, and I'm like, if he dies, he dies.
Mm-hmm. Like Blake's session was honestly so cool. Like I've
Thank you.
Oh, I mean, all respect to your own like Lovecraftian writing that I've read, Alex. I think you achieved that tone very well too. But as far as the session went, I think Blake managed like a really chilling atmosphere last time with it. Like you have to burn the bones that of the like people we tortured, and like there was sulfuric acid onto them, and like I can't even frame that without it sounding like campy and wild. But I know when I was playing it and like when Blake was DMing it, there was a very good and like convincing atmosphere all around that stuff.
And I would like to clarify that I feel in no means in direct competition with Blake for Lovecraftiness.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, I consider myself his student to a degree.
I see.
I wouldn't go that far.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I would say that you know and have read more Lovecraft than me and have been inspired to explore and find my own like voice in that genre to some degree part of you. So I would say that.
Mm-hmm. I also want to, I guess, maybe shout out to an inspiration for the whole like shellfish, selfish pun.
It took so much not to like. I might have even laughed out loud when you said he was a lobster.
Yeah, it's definitely a great reveal. But
I was looking at the final room text, and as you just like bust through the door screaming spices, it was
Spices.
all I could do not to just die of laughter.
yeah.
The inspiration.
Oh yeah, no, that was like, I guess a shout out to the like, I guess a pretty big pun from a game I played when I was like, I think 12 or 13, where there was like a whole like confusion with like a researcher, I guess, menacing a village because they thought he was the selfish doctor, but he was just the shellfish doctor. Book of Living Magic by Jonas Karatzis, I think. Came out in
Nice.
2011. Yeah.
That's pretty dope.
Mm-hmm. What were you saying?
Oh yeah, I just enjoyed playing the transition from like, okay, gotta go get my spice rack back to just like, enough of this over the course of the
Yeah.
and just ending with him sprinting down the hallway carrying the corpse of the fungal chief's flaming corpse while waving a flaming cannibal over his head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as dinner time draws closer, like the stakes grow higher.
Yeah, I mean, and that's to some degree like where I tried to play the evil of it, where he's not malicious. He just considers his ideals and laws to be more important than everybody else's.
Right, yeah, I think you did that pretty well because like one issue that I noticed with like some groups is the need to like take every non-combat option or like peaceable resolution when offered, you know? Even when it's like not necessarily suitable to, I guess, the context or the character.
And
It
I
was
feel like a
refreshing
lot
that
of
you could like toss everything out the window and be like, all right, I'm setting my club on fire.
It was very, very entertaining to, perhaps aptly, watch a character questing for dinner go absolutely ham fucking sandwich on everything.
I was
Oh,
also
go on.
I had a lot of fun being like, all right, fire newts, elegant courier, fungal things, fighting spirit.
Yeah, Derek, you said fungal things, and I immediately went, oh god, the fungus men from Darkest Dungeon, they're back!
It's funny because I've actually like done stat blocks for the mushrooms from Dark Souls. Those are great fun.
Don't fuck with the mushrooms.
Honestly. One of those punches will deal 40-10 bludgeoning to a boy.
Oh.
Oh, do you want to? Yeah. So part of, I don't think it wouldn't have actually mattered, but I would have been in a lot more trouble if I hadn't taken the tough feat.
Oh, that's like plus 1 HP per level essentially, right?
+2.
Plus 2, my god.
Yeah.
That's
So
massive.
I was at 124 instead of 104.
Yeah, I did sandbag the young bronze dragon a bit because the CR wasn't perfect for a 10th level solo character. It has 18 AC, but you were like landing so many 17s that I had to like give those hits over, or we'd have been in big
I
trouble.
appreciate that. And if we're being canonical, a thing operating a suit would be a little more flat-footed than like a living being of that size. So you could argue that it just shaves off a single point there,
Of course. And like we're especially at the steampunk level, but even today, like technology can't quite make up for organic efficiency.
Yeah,
Of, like,
dude,
design.
do you ever think about that where it's just like we have the most like the new Japanese supercomputer, I forget its name, is at like something petaflops of processing power, which is still under 1,000th of the minimum number of bits required to imitate the amount of processing power in the human brain, let alone its speed or complexity or anything. That's like literally just the number of bits, and that computer is like the size of a room.
Damn.
Like, it just blows. Like, you think like we gotta be getting close, and then you look at the numbers and no, we're not, because that's the lower limit. The upper limit is 10 million times more than that computer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
What gets-
ridiculous.
What gets to me is the like robotics and exoskeleton tech, because like it's getting there, but dear god, it's inefficient compared to like just normal human walking.
And that's a really interesting thing as well, where capitalism, we're gonna get a little into that side of things, I guess, but capitalism forces us to only do things that are strictly more efficient than our other options, which doesn't always allow for the fact that product and design don't always move in straight lines, and that sometimes we need to move pretty far towards inefficiency before we get large progress.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense, and I suppose the similar way that it's easier to engineer a bomb than a power plant.
Exactly, yeah, and it's like a big place where we've tried to address it is actually the pharmaceutical industry, where the reason you get 5 years of basically monopoly over whatever drug you design is to make it worth the fact that you need to do a minimum of 10 years of research on every drug before you can release it to market.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, like, if it wasn't literally monetarily worth it to waste 5 to 10 years of your company's existence towards developing this drug, we would never get new drugs. And there's some, like, really unfortunately compelling arguments as to why some of the current pieces of our system are in the place they are. I don't think they're unchangeable, but I do think a lot of it is more complicated and harder to address than some people consider it to be. Not that, like I said, not that it isn't still the right thing to do, but just like you know.
I think what you're getting into there is like called necrocapitalism, which is like basically, I don't know, kind of an idea that like capitalism is like so deeply entrenched that it's kind of like a death driver of like anything that's like not related to it, and also like manages to exploit that. Um, it's definitely like bad as far as like suboptimal decisions go, right? And like you said, discourages lateral growth, but like pharmaceuticals is definitely an area where we need constant development, but I don't know, do we really need like faster cars? You know, is like another question that should come up. Like planned obsolescence is so bad in like so many
And
industries. Mm-hmm.
and the thing that I'd say in response to that is I don't know if we like so capitalism. I've always said, welcome to our new podcast. This is uh
Politics with
the
like three
Tabletop
idiots.
Times. No, this is the Tabletop Times, where we discuss politics only as directly relevant to other conversations about tabletop games.
Pretty much.
But like, there's an argument that capitalism, but like the way our current system works is like the uber rich get everything first, but that's there is an argument that the uber rich get everything first, but that's okay, because if the uber rich didn't exist, they wouldn't be able to push funds around efficiently enough to create those things in the first place. That basically, like, you need a Bill Gates in order to spend $8 billion on creating a new company that otherwise literally no one else would have the liquid assets to be able to create. And I don't know. I've never had a strong counter argument to that, but at the same time, it just feels slimy to me.
I don't, because it's not a necessity, right? Like, who says we have to have like constant forwards, quote unquote, progress? Like, do we need a new company to exist? Like, because allowing that super rich class to exist now also means allowing like the existence of like the impoverished and marginalized, right? And like,
Yes.
they carry most of the burdens that like emerge from like this quote unquote progress that develops, and everyone's like, it's fine because the end goal of capitalism is to like create a utopia, right? Where like everyone has everything and you're like post scarcity and like things are good for everybody.
Yes.
But if you're
That
like
is
constantly like
the
deferring, like you're basically like deferring the responsibility to like make things better. Like
what happens to a dream deferred?
yeah, forever, exactly. Like,
Yeah.
and there's always like this like hypothetical like tomorrow's child that like lets us make sacrifices on behalf of
That's a
people
really
who
good
exist
point as well.
today. You know,
Because that's also something that comes up in kind of the opposite way, where you partially get like the dream deferred, and it's like, we'll do it for the tomorrow's people, but then you also have the occasional issue of, we need to do it for tomorrow's people when it comes to things like climate change and social rights, where you're asking people to give up. I mean, like, I don't personally think that the argument that white people are reasonable, that it's reasonable for white people to be scared of social justice because they're going to lose everything they have, I think that's ridiculous. The people that are actually going to be losing things are the Bill Gateses, not the Arizona trash. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm from that area. We're trash.
But it's like, that's part of the big dupe, is the idea that like you're actually better off than them. But I've kind of talked myself in a circle and forgot my original point. Interesting. Oh yeah, but then there's the idea of like, we need to change things now and disrupt the current system to create a better one. But it's also really hard to legitimately ask people who are only ever going to get to live one life to give up a part of the comfort of that life for people they may never know. And I agree that it is the right thing to ask, and I also believe to some degree that it's the right thing to do it. But when looking at it from kind of that perspective, everybody, yeah, we all only get one, and what we do with that is really important to each of us,
it's well, yeah, on an individual basis, it's like definitely like a difficult thing to like ask, to consider, to like accede to. But on the terms of like groups, I think like looking at it from that perspective makes it easier to like make these claims, you know? Because like, for example, I think we can agree that like the global north reaps a lot of the benefits of like all this modernization, right? And like everywhere else like pays the price for it, because like those are the precarious, like, I don't know, um island like nations where like land, sorry, is being lost every day to the ocean or whatever.
Yeah,
Or like
you have
high
like
altitude
literal
communities where,
higher
yeah.
costs of living because of, your floods, and you have to deal with harsher weather and all
Yeah.
of that.
And like definitely industry's been going on for a while now and created like a lot of burdens. And I personally like the argument that even if you're not the one that made the decision, you know, to like create this like difference of like benefits and drawbacks and distribute it in that way, I think so long as you're a beneficiary of it, you still have some kind of responsibility to like redistribute wealth or like medicine or like just like quote unquote comfort in a way that
I
makes
a
up for that.
I 100% agree. The thing I'm trying to address is just like, how do you phrase that in a way such that those people will actually feel motivated to do so, instead of just looking at it as like the way I described. I get one life. I'm lucky enough to have been handed a nice one. I'm not going to give that up.
Mm. Yeah, I forget like where I read it, but it came up recently somewhere that like you can't teach empathy, you know, like people
Yeah.
who don't have it will like never understand that perspective. And I think that's pretty true. Like
I think
how do
I
you
would
like
say that it
mm-hmm.
can't be taught, but can be learned, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but like people need to like go through stuff to like develop that kind of
Yes.
empathy.
Yeah, it needs to happen to them.
Exactly. Yes,
I mean, I
things
guess
are
if you want to go full supervillain with it, you could just try and engineer situations for everyone traumatic enough for them to develop empathy, but that's a whole nother kettle of fish.
mm-hmm. Oh well.
Oh, what I was going to say forever ago is that, speaking of the way capitalism, like, produces efficiencies and inefficiencies, like we were talking about, where you were like, I forget what you were saying it was. It's like, oh yeah, do we need faster cars?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we are only just entering the stage where that is a relevant question. Where for a very long time, I think the vast majority of the technological advancements we were making were actually fairly necessary to even just create a safe enough society that we can ask the question of if we need it to be safer or more productive or better in any of those senses. Because to some degree, the faster car isn't just more convenient, it's also quicker ambulance response times, and it's the ability for food and medicine to like reach across the country and for us to communicate and send things to each other. And it's part of what like transportation in general is part of what binds a global society together and allows it to even exist in the first place. And that we haven't reached, until very recently, we haven't had any of those things be strong enough, whether it's communication, transportation, medicine, and like anything like that, to actually be like, okay, are we getting diminishing returns now? Like, is a car that can go 0 to 65 in 1 second that much better than a car that can go 0 to 60 in 1 second, you know? And do we now want to focus on getting everybody a car that goes 0 to 60 instead of making sure that there exist cars that go 0 to 70? Because, it wasn't that long ago that people were dying of polio.
Bro, the whole like history around the development of the polio vaccine is so sad. Like they did like this one dude so dirty, but that's neither here nor there, I guess. I think it's interesting that you talk about cars when like trains have been a thing for so long. Like I agree that you want like fast ambulances, for example, but like I think like tied into capitalism is like this sense of like individualism as well. Like a huge proportion of Americans rate having a car as like essential to the American dream, for example, you know? But like,
And I should clarify, I was actually agreeing with you. I'm just saying I think we're only just entering the area where that is correct. Because, like, if, you know, like, basically, I'm kind of looking at electric cars as perhaps the final necessary development in them, you know? But there are definitely still aspects of our technology that can and need to be improved. I don't think it's speed, I don't think it's flashiness, I don't think it's a lot of the things our society currently focuses on. So I agree in a lot of ways. And the thing I always say is, like, nobody has ever in their entire life actually enjoyed a Happy Meal toy. Yet we produce so many of them so efficiently because it makes somebody money, you know? And currently our society asks whether or not something can make somebody money, and that is what determines whether or not it is a worthwhile endeavor. And we need to start looking at other metrics to measure to see whether or not we actually want things.
I think I largely agree with you about like how we're just reaching the point, but at the same time, I feel like we have like, I don't know, certain areas where we've like reached that in the past. Like, do you really need more to happen on a phone beyond like finding your location and like being able to like make calls? Like, I don't
actually specifically recently made a proposal to a class about how to alter phone development to allow for the fact that we've basically hit a wall with it.
Yeah, like phones don't need to be getting longer, you know, and like
Yeah.
having like, I don't know, 160 gigabytes of storage.
What I said was that we should just make all phones modular like computers so that you can continue to develop new technology for them, but you don't need to fully upgrade your phone if you want to upgrade the processor. So, like, if you do want a faster phone, fine, but it's just your phone, but faster.
Also smart, yeah.
Yeah. Because basically, like you were saying, planned obsolescence is the bane of our society being actually efficient.
There's a company I want to call out, but I feel like if we did, we'd get. But I feel like if I did, we'd get copyright strike.
Hey, can I get a... Who here hates Apple? Me.
Yep.
Apple's
Sue me,
Apple's
Steve
guilty
Jobs.
for sure.
Sue me from heaven.
Yeah, speaking of like things we can and can't mention, oh my god, am I
think
allowed
we
to
can
swear?
mention
I
everything.
think someone swore earlier, and in my head I was like, oh, I guess swearing okay.
It was definitely me. It was almost definitely me.
Yeah, it
I
was.
said shit, I think, as well. I don't know, is basically where I'm at.
Okay.
I think for now we can swear in recordings because we're recording it, and if it is an issue, we bleep it.
But like that's just like
Ugh,
work for the
hate
editor, you know?
censorship.
Like, and if an editor like misses it and like we get sued for $1 million by the people who own the swear word or whatever, like what happens?
I don't think that's quite how that works.
I know.
Fuck is still public domain.
Yeah, I think we should try and not swear, if for no other reason than a lot of sites might put like an adult content label on us for that, and that's something we
Yeah.
want to avoid.
Yeah.
Um,
And like
I
brands and
think-
stuff.
yeah, exactly, when it comes to anything in terms
Yeah.
of public appearance.
Yeah, because I was thinking about like talking about my mic, I don't know, a while ago, just because it came up, what brand mic do you use? And I was like, is this product placement question mark?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're allowed to say things like that as long as we make it clear whether or not we are actually sponsored by those organizations.
Oh, I'm not sponsored by my mic company. No.
Yeah. I am not sponsored by Yeti or Alienware, although those are the products I am using here. And Shure headphones. Not sponsored, but great headphones. I will actually shout out Shure headphones, SHURE. If you're an audiophile at all, or like looking to figure out if you're an audiophile, that is your entrance into the quality headphones world. Check it out. They're all like not name brand because they're like studio, not branded, basically. So they're just like flat black, but work super well for their price.
You want
I
to talk
wanna
about
shout
your
out my
pop
rig,
filter
but
too?
It's home built, so I can't.
What?
I want to shout out my rig because it's awesome, but basically each component is a different brand.
Fair.
Oof. At that point,
And
you'd
what were you
just be
saying?
talking about building a PC. Oh, I said, do you want to shout out your pop filter brands too?
Oh.
This
Yeah,
one goes out to
Pernod
Brandy
brand
Melville.
pop filters. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, that is something semi-related. Keep your eyes peeled, listeners, for a potential tangential podcast to this one by me and our editor, one of our editors / stage manager, Lyrica Yanaway, because we might be doing a little 10-minute how to podcast thing once a month where we just talk about the process of creating a podcast and how to do one with no training or equipment like we are.
Cute.
Yeah. That being said, we've been going for quite a while here. I think we should probably
the
call it
post
before
show
too
is
long.
almost as long as the actual show at this point.
Yeah.
We should
I think we
cut,
should be
right?
aiming for half an hour for these in the future.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
This one stays long, though. Screw it. You all get
Yeah.
to listen to our lovely ramblings, and we'll just try and do a better job of... cutting
Now
it
I'm
short
horrified that
in
Dana
future.
is going to judge the frick out of my poor grasp of politics or whatever. Dude, the world's gonna judge the frick out of it. Oh well.
Politics are not my strong suit. That's why I
Blake was
didn't say
very
a ton.
intelligently silent.
Well, anyway, thank you all for tuning in, as always. This has been the 1 Hour One-Offs post-show. Check these out on Patreon in the future.
Yes. Thanks, kids.
Yep.
See you soon.